And today we have Aleda Taruno with the Disability Rights of California. And she is going to bring you all a presentation to talk about your disability rights and work incentive planning and assistance. And I'm sure that she's going to give you some great information. And if we have any technical difficulties, bear with us. We're learning and we're bringing it to you live. So without any further ado.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm glad to be here. I'm very glad to be here in person. I'm glad it worked out. I'm glad the technology is working out. Maybe I shouldn't say that. I'm going to jinx it. But my name is Aleda Taruno. You'll have my contact information at the end. I'm from Disability Rights California. You'll also have the Disability Rights California website at the end. I work under a really small program. It's called WIPA, Work Incentives Planning and Assistance, and we provide individualized one-on-one work incentives and benefits counseling for people who are on Social Security benefits who are trying to return to work. So there's a lot of information out there when you're making that transition, right? You're going from benefits to work. How am I going to keep my health care? How am I going to keep benefits, or do benefits get lost? And what happens if the job doesn't work out? So I'm going to provide some information, very broad information. It's not everything that I can, in this type of time that I have, I can't provide you with everything. And also you have to remember that benefits are individualized, right? Not everybody's benefits are the same. There's a lot of unique situations as well. So we're going to talk a lot about just overall big picture. I will pause periodically for questions. I will ask, are there any questions along the way? If something's not clear to you and you want to try to understand it, please ask questions. If there is something more particular to your situation, I would suggest, at the end, you'll have my contact information and you can always reach out and give our office a call and you'll have all that contact information. Okay, so my presentation is going to focus on folks who are already on Social Security benefits. So I'm not an expert on getting on Social Security benefits. I work with people who are already on Social Security benefits. So that's our starting point. And we're going to break down the different programs that Social Security Administration administers. Okay. So the picture you see here is, I call it my Social Security Administration Octopus. And it's a visual to help you understand that Social Security administers different programs. And so when I'm talking to folks, one of the first things I have to do is figure out what benefits do they receive, including are they on Social Security disability insurance benefits? Are they on disabled widow benefits? Are they on childhood disability benefits? Or are they on SSI? Or are they on both? There's also the retirement program, but we don't work with folks that are on the retirement program. We work with folks who are either on disability benefits based on Title II, which includes the SSDI, DWB, and CDB benefits. And that is all the acronyms for Social Security disability insurance, disabled widow benefits, and childhood disability benefits. And then there's the SSI tentacle, referred to as Title 16, Supplemental Security Income. So we're going to talk about those different programs, how they differ, and the work rules. But you have to keep those separate because they're two different programs, and it is possible to be on both, and that gets just more complicated. But all right, so let's focus on Title II, which is, again, it's going to include SSDI, DWB, CDB. So when I say Social Security disability insurance, I'm really referring to Title II benefits. I use it interchangeably. All right. So who receives, where does Title II or Social Security disability money come from? So many of us that have worked or are currently working, we see a lot of deductions on our checks. And believe it or not, you're actually paying for an insurance program. So Social Security disability provides benefits to disabled or blind individuals who are insured by the workers' contributions to the Social Security Trust Fund. These contributions are the Federal Insurance Contributions Act, or FICA, Social Security tax. So as we work, we're paying into this insurance program. So this is why I have a picture of money going into a piggy bank and then somebody turning the piggy bank around to get that money out. And that's because that's how it works. When you are working, you become a disabled individual, you may have that insurance program that pays for you to be able to have a monthly cash benefit. Next slide, please. So it is possible for the worker and others to be eligible for that benefit. So who may be entitled to these benefits? So there has to be a worker with a disability, but sometimes some of my clients are the worker's spouse with a disability, or a widower with a disability, or even an adult son or daughter with a childhood disability. So when I'm working with clients, these are all the pieces I need to figure out. Are you receiving benefits? Are you the worker? Are you the son or daughter of a worker? Are you the spouse? Next slide, thank you. So Social Security disability insurance provides a monthly cash benefit, but also it provides the Medicare benefit, which is a healthcare program. So the disabled worker, the disabled spouse, the disabled widower, and an adult child with a childhood disability eventually become eligible for Medicare if they're receiving a cash benefit. There is normally a 24-month waiting period for that healthcare benefit. All right, so now we're going to talk about what happens if I am on these benefits and I want to go to work. What are work incentives? All right, so what happens? So this is the scenario. So through the WIPA program that I work with, I get these questions every day. I get calls every day. I want to go to work. I'm afraid to go to work because what if it doesn't work out? I can't lose my healthcare benefit. I just want to work part-time. I need to keep my Medicare. I need to keep my Medi-Cal. So these are all the concerns that folks have when they go back to work, and they are legitimate concerns because the way that our healthcare system works is that you have to be attached somehow to an employer for insurance, right? But if you're disabled, you're depending on Medicare. And if you go back to work part-time, or maybe you're just starting a new job, you can't lose that healthcare, right? That's really important. For some people, it's important to keep that cash benefit because they know that maybe they just need that extra money. Maybe they're not sure if they can do it. They're not sure if they can really work 20 hours a week or 30 hours a week or 40 hours a week. So these are all the concerns that people have when they call me. Go ahead. Okay, so again, we're on the tentacle of the Social Security Disability Insurance Program. So the federal government wants to encourage people to go to work. So there is what's something called a trial work period. So the trial work period allows people to go to work and there's no impact to benefits the first 9 months that they work. So during the trial work period, a person will receive their full SSDI benefits, regardless of how high their earnings might be, as long as they have a disabling impairment. And the trial work period continues until the person accumulates 9 months, and they don't have to be consecutive. Hold on one second. So the trial work period is a threshold. So this year's threshold is $1,050. Last year's threshold was $970. So what that means is that if a person goes back to work and they are trying to test their ability to work, can I do it? Can I do 20 hours? Can I do 30 hours? Can I do a full, 40 hours? They have this trial work period to figure it out. And some people go to work without knowing that they have a trial work period. But when I'm working with folks, I make sure that they understand, okay, you have this trial work period, but we also have to verify that they have a trial work period. So
Question about that.
yes.
So the trial work period, does the employer know about the trial work period as well? Or is it the person going back to work responsibility to tell them? How does that work?
Okay, good question. So the trial work period is a Social Security work incentive. So a person will go to work and the employer may not even know that the person might have a disability. Maybe it's obvious, maybe it's not, but it doesn't matter. The trial work period is a work incentive with Social Security. So if a person goes to work, the employer really has nothing to do with the trial work period. It's Social Security who will confirm that the person has a trial work period. Working with us, we confirm in advance and say, okay, you have a trial work period. This is the goal you've told us about. This is how you're going to use it each month because this is what you're earning. Maybe they're earning over the threshold amount. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're earning, a very small part-time job, $800 a month. Maybe they're not even using it. So we'll also inform the client of the fact that they're not using the trial work period. So what it means is that if you are earning at this threshold or above, you start using your trial work periods. So the example I gave earlier is that if you're earning $800, are you using a trial work period? No, because you're not earning at that trial work period threshold. That this is only SSDI and you only use a trial work period if you're earning at this threshold or above. Okay.
So if I work February and I make $850, that month doesn't count.
Correct.
But if I work March and I make $1,200, that month counts. And
As a
then
trial
maybe
work period
say,
month.
then maybe
That's
say
right.
July, I go back to $800. It doesn't count in the 9 months, correct?
That's correct. That's correct. So the question for the audience members is just to clarify what you asked about earning 800, earning 1,200. If you earn 800, you're not using a trial work period month. If you're earning 1,200, you're using a trial work period month. The Social Security beneficiary doesn't have to disclose they have a disability. So you could, let's say, go to work at Trader Joe's, for example. We're here at the community center that's right, and Trader Joe's is right next door. You get a job at Trader Joe's, maybe stocking or cash register. You get a job just like anybody else, right? You reveal you have a disability if you want an accommodation. That's a whole other, training. But if you're the one that's responsible for your hours and what you're earning, just like anybody else, it's not any different. The way Social Security eventually determines if you use a trial work period is when they do a work review. And that only happens if the person is reporting earnings, which you're required to do if you're going to work and on Social Security benefits, you have to report earnings. So again, when we work with folks, we make sure these are all the details we go through. Okay. All right. So next slide, please. Okay. So here's an example in this slide of someone who is going back to work. And as you can see, it's an example of someone who goes to work and is earning in January $500. Are they using a trial work period month in January? No. In February, they're earning $600, in March, $700, April, $900, and so forth. You get to August and maybe they start increasing their hours. They like the job. They earn $1,300. So that's their first trial work period month, right? Nothing is happening to benefits at this point. Again, the theory behind the rule is to encourage people to go to work to see if that's something that they can do. They need maybe adjustments. Maybe they can't go back to doing that kind of work that they were familiar with or that they had experienced in, and maybe they need employment supports, right? Maybe they need to go to Department of Vocational Rehabilitation. Maybe they need to work with an employment network to get help to figure out what can they do, okay? So it could take you 3 years to use all 9 trial work periods. They count them within they count them within a 60-month rolling period. And that's very complicated to explain. Yeah, they count them within a 60-month rolling period. That's harder to explain in a presentation, but yes, it's possible that it could take you, a long time to use the trial work period months. Yeah, maybe the first job you work at above the trial work period threshold for maybe 3 months, the job doesn't work out and maybe you don't come back to work for another year. So you have the rest to use. I've had a lot of clients who attempted to go to work. They come to us for benefits counseling. And I asked, well, have you been to work before? No, or yes, whatever the answer is. We verify that they have a trial work period. Sometimes they're surprised they don't have them because they've used them and they counted all of them, like they've used all 9, or they used 2, or they've used 2 8 years ago. So those may not count, right? So, again, if you need benefits counseling to figure these pieces out, that's what we do. And again, I'll go over our services at the end, but that's what we do is we verify for clients that they have this trial work period and it's available to them so that they can make a decision. That's the most important thing that I do is for someone to make their decision about working. I don't make that decision. Social Security doesn't make that decision. The person makes a decision. Are they going to go to work? How much are they going to earn? This is what you need to know if you are going to go to work so you can make a decision about your work activity. All right. So the magical question now is what happens after that 9th trial work period? Maybe you use them and it took you 2 years. Maybe you use them consecutively. So this is really important, is to know what happens after the trial work period. So that's what we're going to talk about next. All right. So you enter a 3-year period. It's called the extended period of eligibility. So you're still eligible. You're still considered disabled by Social Security standards, right? But benefits may or may not pause depending on how much you're earning. So again, this is about making an informed choice about your work activity, right? So the extended period of eligibility is a 3-year period immediately following the 9th trial work period. Benefits continue for all months earnings or work activities are below the substantial gainful activity level, or SGA, and I'll explain that in just a second. Cash benefits are suspended for months earnings are over the SGA level, suspended, right? Not terminated. If earnings fall below the SGA level during this 3-year period, then benefits can restart without a new application. So it's an on and off provision, right? So you're working, things are going great, but maybe something happens, you can't work at that level anymore. Then you're in the extended period of eligibility, you can restart benefits again. It's not a new application. All right, so what is SGA, substantial gainful activity? So SGA is a decision that Social Security makes. The performance of significant and productive physical or mental work for pay or profit. And it's more than just a number or a dollar amount of monthly gross earnings. It's a decision that Social Security makes on the value of a beneficiary's performance. So they look at what you're earning for sure, but they look at a lot of facts. And we're going to talk about all those different kind of things that they look at. We're not going to get into too much detail because it's a lot. But again, this is what I do. I go over this. I'm like, is there, and then I'll show you just a second. Essentially, after all those facts, if your earnings are over a certain threshold, then benefits will pause, right, during the extended period of eligibility. This year's threshold is the highest threshold we've ever had and the highest increase we've ever had, and it's $1,470. So let's take a look at what that means. Okay, so what facts does Social Security consider to make an SGA decision? That's what we're going to talk about next. Okay, so one of the things we're going to look at is something called impairment-related work expenses. These are certain expenses for things you need because of your impairment in order to work, and they may be deducted when counting earnings to determine if you are performing substantial work. Okay, so out-of-pocket costs for medications, specialized transportation, guide dogs, service dogs. There's a list of them in the next, I think in the next slide. So these are things that Social Security wants. So do you have these out-of-pocket expenses? Because we're going to consider these out-of-pocket expenses and we're not going to count them as part of your income. So this can make a difference between someone working over SGA or under SGA, depending on what that expense is. I've had a client who was paying for therapy services monthly. And so that brought her income down to the SGA level. I'm trying to think, a lot of them are medications, transportation. A lot of my clients who are blind have to pay for transportation. That has been accepted as an impairment related work expense. So this is not an exhaustive list at all. You know, this is just an example. Attendant care services, maybe somebody will pay, you'll pay somebody to help you just get ready for work. Drugs, medical services, transportation, guide dog expenses. So if the person is just getting, maybe they find someone to help them get ready in the morning and they pay them just to do that. Maybe they pay a person at the end of the evening to help them get into bed and in the morning. So, you know, all these things help the person get to work. If that's an expense that that person is paying for out of pocket, it could be an impairment related work expense. So it says service animals in the policy. So it could be maybe an emotional support animal. It just depends. So it could be, yes. It doesn't have to have like a technical legal like license or anything like that in the policy. It says service animal. So it could be. Yes. So the question is, what if I my wife helps me get ready for work and I'm not paying her? There's no out-of-pocket expense. So it's not an impairment related work expense. There has to be an out-of-pocket expense. There's an extra hoop to jump when you're related to them and it's their spouse. So there is an extra hoop to jump for that. Yeah. So transportation depend. Yeah. I mean, there's different types of transportation services people now take, But if there is a relative who's providing it that you're paying for, like a spouse, there's an extra hoop to jump that I don't want to get into today, but yeah, so definitely you want to ask that question. Okay, so here's an interesting one that a lot of people don't know about, and I have clients who've used it, subsidy and special conditions. So this is something that's provided by the employer or a third party. So an employer subsidy happens when the beneficiary's employer provides extra accommodation, supervision, or other special assistance because of the beneficiary's disability. So essentially what's happening is that I've had a couple of clients who, let's say they're working for an employer and their output is different from everybody else, right? Because of their disability, they're accommodated. Maybe they don't, maybe about, let's say that 10% of the duties that they do, they don't have to do them compared to everybody else. That's the best way to explain it. So I've had clients who are regional center clients who get a lot of supervision. You know, maybe they're working at a market or stocking, and they get an extra supervision, and maybe they get more supervision, but they're still getting paid the same as everybody else, right? So Social Security can put a value on that and say, okay, well, you're working you're working at 80% maybe, right? But you're getting paid at 100%. So Social Security will use that 20%, 80, yes, 20%, sorry, that 20% and not count it as part of their income. So I see regional center clients who work in stores that have that. I've had clients who work, I had a client, one of my very first cases, like, you know, very long ago, was working, I forgot what disability she had, but it was one that over time just didn't get better. And the doctor's office that she worked at allowed her to sit. She didn't have to do the filing that she was required to do. She didn't do a lot of the duties that a lot of the office workers had to do. And we realized that Social Security hadn't, at that point that I was working with her, developed the subsidy. So the office manager was able to help us and say, well, these are all the duties everybody does. This is all the duties she does. And like, as you can see, she doesn't do a lot of the things that they do, but they didn't cut her pay. They didn't change her pay. She gets paid the same. So we were able to figure out what percentage based on all those duties she was not performing. And at that point we were at a hearing, but the judge allowed her to have a subsidy. And so that made her income look different. So it wasn't, they look at the income that she actually performed for and not the income she didn't perform that she got paid for. So special conditions exist when a worker receives support or services from someone other than the employer, potentially subsidizing the worker's ability to perform. So if they have a job coach provided by maybe the regional center of vocational rehabilitation, then they can put a value of the job coach, and that value isn't counted as part of the person's earnings. So for either the subsidy or the special condition, Social Security adjusts the value of the income by deducting the costs assigned to the extra help or the special situation that a beneficiary experiences. So these are a little hard to work on because you really have to have an employer who's willing to talk to you, right? So sometimes I have to track down like a supervisor or a manager, and it has to be the right supervisor and the right manager, right? Because someone who works on the weekend shift doesn't work the weekday shift, and then you get the wrong person, and then there's misinformation. So anyway, so the point is that Social Security will look to see when the person's working and they do what's called a work review, whether there is a subsidy or a special condition. They ask these questions to see if they can develop something like that. So all right, so let me give you this example. All right, so this is a person's going to work, right? And they're like, I'm going to go to work. I'm going to be earning $1,600. You know, what's going to happen? So they start earning in January. So this person starts using their trial work period, right? Because they're earning over that threshold. So $1,600 in January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, right? So September is the 9th trial work period month. Great. They're doing great. Things are working out. So it potentially what could happen is because this person's working over the SGA, just by looking at how much they're earning, right? Their benefits would pause, but Social Security is supposed to do a work review, right? And they're going to ask, are there any impairment related work expenses? Is there a subsidy? So if this person had about $140 in impairment related work expense, their earnings would look at as if it were $1,460, and then they'd be under SGA. If the person had, I think it's a 20% subsidy here, they wouldn't count $320, and so their income would look as if it was $1,280, and then they would be under the SGA. So this happens. I have clients who have enough IRWs to bring them down, have enough subsidies, not your subsidies is really, not, I don't see it too much, but in my years of working, I've seen it a lot. So this is what Social Security they can make these decisions. You know, they look at everything carefully. They're supposed to look at everything carefully. That doesn't always happen, but always happens. But this is how it's supposed to look. So when I'm working with someone, I'm looking for these. I'm asking questions to make sure like they know like this is a possibility. So, you know, I prepare them for the questions that Social Security will ask in this document, help them fill out the document that they're going to get. Okay, so what happens to Medicare? So a lot of people think, well, you know, I'm earning $1,600. I guess Medicare is going to disappear. It does not. If cash benefits continue, Medicare eligibility continues. So if they're working under that SGA, or they have IRWs or subsidy that's putting them down under that SGA, the Medicare will continue. But let's say that they are successfully working over that SGA amount. So if cash benefits pause because they're maybe working over that SGA, Medicare can still continue for up to 93 months following that trial work period. And actually it could even last longer. There's another provision that may allow that person to keep it longer. Again, it's just more information that we just don't have time for. If cash benefits terminate, so let's say that they terminate because the person has used a trial work period and they've been working over SGA, they are past that 3-year period because they've been, and you know, they're working over SGA and they pass that 3-year period, then their cash benefits terminate because, you know, they haven't been receiving benefits. Medicare can, or they start working at the SGA level, maybe during that 3-year period, because maybe things go well and maybe they started off under SGA. And benefits eventually also terminate. They can continue for up to 78 months from termination. So this is a work incentive provision that allows people to keep Medicare even if they're not getting a cash benefit. So it's all planning, right? You know, someone wants to see a long-term goal of going to work, returning to work. They need to plan out like, well, what is my income going to look like? What's my healthcare going to look like? Because my employer is not going to offer me, if I work part-time over SGA, my employer may not offer me healthcare, or I want to keep my Medicare because I like my doctors or whatever it might be. I've seen so many different scenarios that I can tell you that, you know, people can be over, overinsured too. They keep all three, Medicare, Medi-Cal, and you know, their healthcare. It's not always prudent to do that, right? Because financially it may not make sense because there's costs associated depending on a lot of things. So again, my job is just to know what the person's goal is or what their job, you know, offer is or what their job is. And then we go over these work rules and we try to figure out like what's going to happen. So they have their plan in place as to what's going to happen. And they can feel good about making that decision and making that jump back into work if that's what they want to do. All right. So I'm done with talking about Social Security Disability Insurance. We're going to switch to SSI, which is a completely different set of work incentive rules. So everything I just taught you, you can just toss it. Food is more expensive in San Diego. I know. I'm from LA. My family's from LA and I see what they pay when we pay. I was like, why do we pay so much for food? But anyway, so it is a safety net program. So if you go to the next, let me just say this before and the amount that a person receives depends on where they live, whether they pay rent, and whether they pay for their share of food. So you could be living independently on your own in your own apartment in a roommate situation, and there's one rate for that, right? Or you could be living with parents, and if you pay your fair market value for your room and board and food, then there's one rate, there's a rate for that. If you live in a boarding care, there's a rate for that. If you don't have cooking facilities, there's a rate for that. So there's just different rates depending on your living situation. The thing you have to remember is that it's to pay for food and rent. So if you get help with paying for food and rent, then that's going to impact your SSI, right? And then there's limited resources, meaning that you can't have a certain amount of money saved. So you can't have more than $2,000, right? If you're a single individual, you can't have more than $3,000. We didn't hear that in SSDI. This is just SSI has these limitations because, again, think of it as a safety net program. We just want to provide you enough to pay for food and rent, you know. So for some of you, you may have heard of ABLE accounts. Have you all heard of ABLE accounts? Okay, so that might be a presentation you definitely want to do. So for people who are on SSI who want to save more, there's now ABLE accounts that allow you to save more, but you have to have had a disability prior to the age of 26. They're going to increase that age limit. So, you know, I can definitely provide you with more information.
Yeah.
There's a great resource for ABLE accounts. It's called the ABLE National Resource Center, and it's a great website to just learn about ABLE accounts. And then California's ABLE account is called CalABLE. So one of the audience members just pointed out that yes, that to be careful because you don't have to pay anybody to help you get an ABLE account. So make sure you avoid those websites. So again, the ABLE National Resource Center, it's all information. It's not about selling you anything. All right. So take a look at this. Okay, so this is the SSI federal and state amounts for a single individual. Okay, again, there's different rates. We're just looking at a single individual. Maybe they live in their own apartment. Maybe they have a roommate, they pay rent 50-50. They could be a young adult living in their parents' home who rents a room and pays fair market value for their room. So the federal amount this year is $914. The state of California supplements this amount for by $219.73. So for a grand total of $1,133.73. Not a lot to pay for food and rent, right? It's just not enough. Last year's rate is in here. It was 1040.21 for the same you know, single individual rate. And then there's a different rate for blind individuals. So I included that in there, but there are different rates for different circumstances. Again, there's a rate for board and care. There's a rate, there's a reduced rate if you're not paying for either rent or food, or you get help with that. So can you have SSI and SSDI, for example, the Title II? It is possible. And the reason that happens is because when you're, let's say that someone's on SSDI and they had a short work history, so their benefit amount may be less than $1133.73, right? And so after a $20 disregard, which you'll understand in a second, it's possible that then they can bring them up to the $1133.73 rate by giving them the difference. So they would get the difference between the SSDI minus a $20 disregard and the $1133.73. So it is possible to have both, but that would mean that the person has a very low amount of SSDI under that $1133.73. So yeah, so the question was, can someone get both and how would that work? So yes, it's possible for someone to have both SSDI and SSI because the SSDI is lower than the SSI benefit rate. So, all right, so for people in California, if you qualify for at least $1 of SSI, you automatically qualify for Medi-Cal. Medi-Cal is our healthcare program, right? That provides healthcare for folks, and the federal name is Medicaid. So there's Medicare, right? Medicaid, but we call our Medicaid program Medi-Cal. So it's possible for people to be on Medicare and Medi-Cal. They're two different programs. Again, Medi-Cal is our healthcare program, and it's because of our healthcare system, right? We don't have a national healthcare system, right? So we have like Medicaid, states participate in it, we participate in it, and through the Affordable Care Act, we've expanded Medi-Cal. So we have a lot of great Medi-Cal programs for families, and under the Affordable Care Act, we have the Cover California. Thank you, Cover California. So we have Cover California, Medi-Cal, and that's how we get healthcare in California for folks who have disabilities or low-income folks. So Medi-Cal is an octopus in itself. I know you didn't get the octopus of Social Security. The Medi-Cal octopus is even bigger. It has even more tentacles. Yeah. So the federal government creates Medicaid, a healthcare program that states can participate in. Right? Not all states participate in Medicaid. We do, and we called it Medi-Cal. So Medi-Cal is our state's version of Medicaid. All right, so we'll talk about Medi-Cal later. Okay, so how does work affect SSI benefits, which is what everybody wants to know, right? All right, so let's take a look at, for this for SSI, we have to learn a lot of vocabulary words, okay? So let me get through the vocabulary words, and then I'm actually going to show you an example, okay? So unearned income exclusion. So Social Security applies. I was talking to you about this earlier. $20 general income exclusion, an exclusion that is first applied to any unearned income and that that somebody may receive. And again, I'll show you this and I'll show you an example in just a second. The next vocabulary word is earned income exclusion. So if somebody has earnings, Social Security does not count most of a person's earned income when they figure out the new SSI payment amount. Social Security does not count the first 65 of a person's earnings in a month plus 1/2 of the remainder. This means that Social Security counts less than 1/2 of your earnings when they figure your SSI payment amount. Blah, 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 blah. What does all this mean, right?
Exactly.
Let me show you an example, okay? But I feel, again, I'm making sure you guys know where I'm getting this from. It's not something I'm making up. All right, so let's take a look at an example. All right. So here we have someone that comes to me and says, okay, I'm looking for a job. I think I want to work. I started creating my resume, or maybe they started working and they're earning $1,300 a month, part-time, minimum wage. This is just an example. So what Social Security will do is they'll look at how much this person is earning. Hold on one second. They'll disregard the first $20 that person earns, right? So there's $1,280, and then they're going to disregard the next $65 that the person earns. And even after that, they're going to disregard 50% of that. So out of that $1,300, Social Security is only going to care about $607.50 of it. Is that the current rate?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So then you reduce the rate that the person receives. So again, everybody receives a different rate, right? And then you deduct the amount, the countable income, and then that's the new SSI payment amount, $526.23. So SSI doesn't go away; it's just reduced. They have their income from work, about $1,300. They have their SSI payment. So in the end, they're going to have a little bit more money in their pocket. For people who are on SSI who work, they will always have more money in their pocket when they work than if they don't work. That's just the way it works. And it's to encourage, it's a work incentive. All right, so there's additional SSI work incentives that you should be aware of. I don't have, we don't have like all the time to just go over every detail of these, but I wanted to talk about them. So if there is a student under the age of 22 who's attending school for a certain amount of hours, I forgot to write down the hours that they have to attend. I think it's like at least 12 hours a week, I think. Don't quote me on that. The amount of earnings that they have will probably be excluded completely. It won't even count. So I have a lot of students who are transition age youth who work. They get paid internships now, regional center clients, or they're getting a lot of work experience. And the theory, of course, has been now that the younger you get kids to work, the more they're likely to work in the future. So there's a big push, or has been a big push, to get students to work. And so they benefit from the student earned income exclusion while they're a student. All of their income is excluded up to a monthly maximum and a yearly maximum. And because kids, usually work maybe during the summer or during breaks, they usually are able to have that income excluded. I'm sorry, I didn't write down usually I'm doing presentations from Zoom, so I have all my little cheat sheets around me. So I forgot to bring those. But yeah, so when I'm working with someone, I need to find out, are they a student, to see if they can benefit from the student earned income exclusion. So the question was, of the folks that attend the ABI program, they have to be, they have to meet the criteria under the age of 22 and attending classes for a certain amount, or attending credits, taking a certain amount of credits, which I apologize, I didn't bring that information, but I can provide it to you if people need that information. Right now, the other work incentive that I love to do, we're still, is the plan to achieve self-sufficiency, or PASS plan. Okay, so remember I said that SSI has a $2,000 resource limit, and remember I told you that SSI reduces the benefit amount. Now, if you have a PASS plan, that means that you have an employment goal that you want to reach, and it's an application you fill out, and you have items that you want to purchase. And so Social Security will allow you to use your earnings from work to either save for that employment goal you have, or to purchase things that you need to make that employment goal long-term. And so it slows down the reduction of the SSI, or it just allows you to save money while you get the full SSI rate. So it's an application process, and I do these all the time now. Like I've had so many past clients. This is my favorite part of my job is past clients, because you can use them very creatively. So the last couple of clients I've had clients who did car repair. So I had a client during COVID who landed an amazing job. She probably wouldn't have had the chance to do it if it wasn't for COVID. It was an amazing offer. She was very nervous. She was on SSI and she wanted to go for it, but she actually had to work in the office. So she needed to appear professionally. And the drive was about 45 minutes. So she needed a car, but there was no way that she could afford to pay for a car. And that was her reality. So we kind of went back and forth like, well, do you have a car you can borrow? Like, what about Uber, Lyft? And we kind of just talked about all of this. And finally she's like, well, my sister has a car and she says, I can use it for work, but it needs repairs. I go, well, let's do that. So I had her talk with a past cadre who approves the plans. I said, talk to him and see if he's willing to do that. And we'll put the past plan together. And so, yeah, he just said he needed a letter from the sister that she could use a car exclusively for her work. And we got that. And she, so for the first couple of months that she worked, her SSI wasn't reduced because really she would have gone down to zero. Her earnings were so high that she would have gone down to SSI would have been zero right away. So we slowed that down so that it wasn't zero right away, so that she can use her earnings from work to pay for some clothes and car repairs. Another client paid for her CNA certification program and some uniforms. I had a client also during COVID who had to pivot pretty quickly and work from home. And she was, trying to find a full-time job, but she found like a short part-time job. So she needed a desk and some ergonomic equipment. So we got that approved for a desk and some ergonomic equipment. I had a client who was going to go to, she needed to move. So I was pushing for a lot of things that didn't get approved, but she got the U-Haul to make sure that she got, because she's going to school. She needed a computer and a printer. So she got those things. So the past plan just allows you to slow down that SSI reduction or to save money for that long-term goal. Maybe the first job you get is just to kind of get your feet wet. I had a client actually who is exactly what happened. Without giving too much information, he got a job at a store, but what he really wanted to do was work with animals. And so I can't give too much detail about it, but it worked out so that he could work at the store and work on a certification program so he could get that job that he really wanted. And so we found the job description for that job and everything he needed. And so we convinced the past cadre to pay for the training program through his past plan. So as he's working and earning money, he's paying for these items that he said he was going to pay for. His SSI is not changing or not being reduced as much. So the past plan is the exception to the rule.
So we found a loophole.
Exactly. It's like a loophole, but it's tricky. It's an application. It has to get approved. I've had clients in a long time ago before I did this work. I did different kind of work where I worked on past plan also, and they weren't approved. So, it's so anyway, I mean, it's a great work incentive if it can work for you. So the ABLE account allows people to save more than $2,000, but what's the catch with that one? You have to be disabled prior to the age of 26, right? In order to get an ABLE account. Eventually that age is going to increase, but not right away. So the people that mostly benefit from the past plan that I've worked with, that I've seen, are the older folks that are making that transition back to work. So that's really who really, has benefited from, at least the people that I've worked with are usually not students because they have the ABLE account, or they're transitioning to school and they have grants. So there's got to be enough items that they want to purchase or save for to make the past plan really work. If you have one item, I forgot, somebody told me what they wanted to pay for. I can't remember. And I was like, I can't make that happen. Like, I don't think the pass carder will approve it for like one small item. Like, it doesn't work that way. Like, it's really, I mean, it's a 12-page application too. So you gotta get a lot of information in there, you know? So, you know, it could be the right fit for folks. I'm always like asking the questions to make sure we can see if there's something we can do. People actually call me because they know about the pass plan. They say, can you help me fill it out? Because they've talked to the pass cadre and they're like, well, you might, yeah, call Aleda. So the pass cadres actually refer clients to me who need help to fill out this pass application because it can be cumbersome and there's a lot of information that goes in there. So, all right. So then there's also, SSI also uses impairment related work expenses. We talked about that. We talked about IRWs or impairment related work expenses during SSI, but they also exist for the SDF, they also exist for the SSI program. And I'll show you an example of how that works in the calculation. And then for people who are blind, there are blind work expenses. So it's just, it really encompasses just a lot more. They're a lot more generous when it comes to blind work expenses. So people who are blind can deduct like their lunches as an impairment related work expense. If you have a physical disability not considered blind, you can't deduct lunches as impairment related work expenses. So that's just an example of that. All right, so let's look at an example of a calculation with an impairment related work expense. All right, so here we go again, right? It's $1,300. They do the $20 disregard. They do the $65 disregard, and then they do that. And then in this calculation, there's an impairment related work expense. So let's say it's $100. So what it does is it allows the person to say, hey, I have this expense. Okay, well, we're gonna not count it as income. And then they do the divided by 2 what's left. So this person has a little bit more higher SSI payment of $576.23 than they did if they didn't have that impairment related work expense. So, all right, we're gonna now switch out to Medi-Cal. Just briefly, because Medi-Cal can go on and on. Okay, so what happens to Medi-Cal? So you're on SSI, you're on Medi-Cal. What happens to Medi-Cal? So if you get SSI and you get it reduced, Medi-Cal still continues. But let's say that you're trying to get off of SSI benefits and work and it goes to 0 like my client did, right? So go to the next slide. So here is my Medi-Cal Octopus, right? So each tentacle is a different Medi-Cal program. So in the SSI world, there's something called 1619B. And that program allows someone who's on SSI, who goes to 0, keep SSI through Medi-Cal through SSI, if they have annual income of $54,082 a year. So it's still possible that if you get 0 SSI, that you're still connected to SSI because of the Medi-Cal. So it's kind of like you put your foot in the door and say like, I'm out of here because I'm not receiving cash benefit anymore, but I might be back if I need to be back. So let's say that the person, something happens, they're not able to work, they open the door back and get back into SSI, no new application, so they can come back. And the reason is because there's a limit that says, okay, you can keep Medi-Cal through the SSI door, but this is the income threshold. There could be an individualized threshold if the person has a lot of healthcare expenses and they're earning above this. I've had only one client in the last 8 years that I've been doing this that I've seen that was able to do that because they were earning more than this amount for the year. Each year this amount increases. This is the 22 rate. It hasn't increased yet. They usually increase it like later in the year. They get to it, sometimes not even then, but this is the current amount that's published. Okay, now it is possible for someone to have Medi-Cal, let's say they're making more than that, or let's say they're on SSDI and they want to work and they're on Medicare. It's actually possible that they can qualify for Medi-Cal because there's a 250% working disabled Medi-Cal program. And they're making more money, they're off of SSDI, and they actually, if they weren't working, they'd have a share of costs. But because they work, then they can fall into this 250% working disabled Medi-Cal program. Working disabled Medi-Cal program, working disabled. I can't emphasize to you, this program is for people who work, who want to work and have a disability. So if you've already been determined to be disabled by Social Security standards, you would qualify for this Medi-Cal program if you have income that's less than 250% of the FPL. And there's usually a premium and the premium is calculated depending on your income, but if you're on SSDI, your SSDI won't count. Any disability related income doesn't count, just your earnings. And they're not collecting premiums anymore, at least for now. So somebody who would have a premium under this program, anywhere from $25 to $250, could get this program for free right now.
Is 60 the maximum?
So this is based on 250% of the FPL. It's a little over $60,000. And this is after all the deductions. So like they're making money, but then there's all these reductions that they do. And the reductions are just like what they do with SSI, the 20 disregard, the 65 disregard, and half of the disregard. And that's only for earnings from work, not the SSDI if they're on SSDI. So a lot of my clients end up working and they're like, I qualify for Medi-Cal? How is that possible? I have a share of costs, or I've never qualified for Medi-Cal. And I'm like, yeah, well, there's this program and you should apply, you know? And so I've got a lot of my clients have gone on the 250%. And what's helpful in California, if you qualify for Medicare and Medi-Cal, the state pays your Part B premium. So you don't get that reduced from your SSDI check, or you don't have to pay it. So the Part B has a monthly premium, and Medicare has, you know, co-insurance, co-pays and all that stuff. But if you're on Medi-Cal in California and you're on Medicare, Medi-Cal will pay that Part B, that monthly Part B premium. So this year it's about $165. It actually went down. It normally goes up. Last year it was $173. Yeah, something like that. So, and so there's different Medi-Cal programs that people could qualify for. Most people who are, if they're making that long-term transition to that job, they could also be offered private health insurance. So that's another factor that people have to consider, like, well, am I going to keep my health insurance through am I going to take the health insurance through my employer? Should I keep Medi-Cal? Should I keep Medicare? And so those are all considerations that the person sort of has to make decisions about. And it really depends on a lot of facts. So I had a client who was on the 250%. He was earning good money, so his premium payment was going to go up. So he would have to pay, you know, in the higher range, 250. Of course, this year he wouldn't have to pay that because they're not paying they're not collecting premiums right now. If he paid the $250 premium, he could keep Medi-Cal, and Medi-Cal would pay his Medicare premium, but his employer insurance was zero. So does it make sense for him? It didn't make sense. And then I said, well, why don't you ask yourself this? Is it the same doctors, the same networks? Like, maybe that'll help you decide. And so he found that out. And it's like, I could go to my same doctors. And I'm like, I think you have your answer. Like, I don't know if you want to pay $250 when you don't have to pay anything for private insurance. So again, everybody's situation is different. That might not be the same situation for someone who has employer-sponsored health insurance. Some employers don't cover the whole cost. Like, it's rare to see that, I think, but right. So there's one more work incentive that I just wanted to talk about and mention. It's called expedited reinstatement. I think it goes through. Okay, there you go. So if a person's SSDI or SSI benefits ended because of work, because their earnings were so high, even if they've lost that cash benefit, it's possible that they can come back on benefits without any application. So for SSDI folks, it's people who have exhausted the trial work period, the extended period of eligibility, like they went back to work successfully, maybe for, 4 years. And then for SSI folks, maybe they've been earning high and they're no longer connected to SSI. And so they want to get back on benefits. So there's something called expedited reinstatement. And this is only available to people who lost benefits due to work and were previously on benefits. And they can actually come back and say to Social Security, I was on benefits about, 4 years ago. And I want to come back on benefits because I'm not able to work anymore. And so they really have a choice between a new application or expedited reinstatement because they've already been determined disabled in the past. It's possible that they still are considered disabled by Social Security standards. So they can come back through EXR. Which one is best for them depends on a lot of things because if they get back through EXR, they'll get back on the benefit they previously received plus all the cost of living adjustments. But if they've been working for a long time, like maybe 4 years, and maybe they had high earnings, they actually might have a higher rate through a new application. So it's sort of pro con, like they have to kind of, and Social Security is really required to counsel them on this because they have that information. They should have the information like, well, this is what you previously received and this is what you would receive. And I've had clients who have made the decision to do a new application. So they come to me and I'm like, oh, well, after I verify benefit, I'm like, you're not on benefits. You applied, you're pending an application. So they make that decision when they meet with Social Security before I even talk to them. They know they are counseled on it. So that's a good thing because Social Security talked to them and said, okay, here are your choices, and they went with the new application. So what is WIPA? What do I do? Work Incentives Planning and Assistance. So this is actually a grant that we get, Disability Rights California, from Social Security. And our the acronym stands for Work Incentives Planning and Assistance, and we provide individual, in-depth, employment-focused benefits counseling and work incentives planning in all 50 states in the U.S. territories. I personally don't help everybody out in the United States. So there are WIPA projects in every state because California is so big, and the way that the Ticket to Work legislation was created or written, we're limited to how many counties we can help. So and our WIPA program at Disability Rights California helps San Diego, Riverside, and Imperial County. So we help those 3 counties. There's 7 WIPA projects in California. So we're just one of 7 WIPA projects. So the other projects are with, some of them are through like independent living centers. There's one with the local workforce center. So, and so if you need to find, I'll show you how to find the WIPA in your county if you're not in San Diego County or Riverside County or Imperial County. Those are the 3 counties that I focus on. And so so we're funded primarily by Social Security Administration. We get training to provide work incentives counseling through Social Security Administration's contract with Virginia Commonwealth University. And my title is Community Work Incentives Coordinator. So in order to have this title, I undergo a background check and I receive clearance from Social Security. I complete training, an initial training that can take almost a year to do. Initially, when I started doing this work, I had to do this training. I had to go to Colorado. Now it's in person. Now it's not in person. It's in Zoom. It's via Zoom. And I have to complete ongoing training each year to maintain my certification. So I can't do this work unless Social Security knows that I've been certified every year. And our program is all about work. As I said in the beginning, I don't help people get on benefits. I'm working with people who are on benefits who are maybe trying to make that transition back to work. Our mission is all about, employment and financial independence for beneficiaries of the Social Security disability programs. That's what I do. So sometimes I get that occasional call like, oh, I applied. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I don't help with applications. So I usually, let them know who in their community they can go to. So Legal Aid Society of San Diego has an SSI team, and they help some people with the appeals process. So if they have an appeals question, they need help with appealing, they need help with SSI, I usually refer them to the Legal Aid of San Diego if they're in San Diego. There's also in Riverside, it's Inland County Legal Services. I usually refer them to their local legal aid, and they probably will have resources for them if they're not in the appeal stages and are just applying. I don't know if they help with the application process, but I just depend on those legal aids that they have experts on their staff that just do SSI eligibility. And there's also attorneys that do it, they do it on a contingency fee basis. Mm-hmm. So if the person applies, they don't get in, it takes them a year and then their application is approved. That's how the attorney gets paid. They get paid like a percentage of the amount that will be given to that person retroactively. So WIPA is, anybody can just call. I'll give you the toll-free number in just a second. So I think that's all I need to say in that slide. I'll explain my contact information. Okay. So, there's WIPAs. What I do now is benefits counseling. There's also people who are doing this at Department of Vocational Rehabilitation. So if you're connected with Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, there's a counselor there you'll eventually get referred to. They're called WIPs, just to make things more confusing, right? They're called Work Incentives Planners. So Department of Rehab also has Work Incentives Planners, and they do the same thing we do. They provide benefits counseling. They're limited in that they can only help people at a certain point when they're getting DOR services. So they usually refer people to us if they're not in plan with DOR yet, or if the person's case is being closed because they've successfully, started working. DOR usually closes case 90 days after the person started working. So they may refer the client to us for like ongoing benefits counseling. So, I always suggest to people, if you're going to go work, you don't have to get help from WIPA, but you could get help from Department of Rehabilitation, ask questions, find out, get information. There's a great website, it has good information. It's DB 101. If you're not familiar with it, a lot of the information I've talked about is in there. Always, here's a question that somebody had about reporting, always report your earnings to Social Security. So what's been going on with Social Security, and I'm going to have a meeting with about this soon, so I'll have better information, is that they required SSI recipients to report every month. So SSI, you have to report every month because they look at income when it's received. So if you're getting paid every week or every 2 weeks, you might have 2 paychecks, you might have 3 paychecks, depending on when you get paid, right? So they wanted you to report every month, all the paychecks you receive for that month. But they can estimate based on your pay, like that you first report, they can estimate what you're going to be getting paid. And the reason that's good is because if they don't catch your pay information right away, you can avoid overpayments that way. And it's always better that they overestimate rather than underestimate, right? Because otherwise, if they do those calculations late, you'll get an overpayment. So even reporting on time, SSI, sometimes the information just sits there at the Social Security office. So there's, sometimes it's just hard to avoid overpayments when it comes to SSI, but they do require you, if you look at the information, to report every month. But there's different ways to report. So they have apps now. They have, you could always report through your My SSA account. So if you haven't opened your My SSA account, that's a great way to report. You have to make an initial report to the local office, and then you can use My SSA account. But a lot of people have trouble, they don't have computers, or maybe they don't know how to, kind of navigate things. It's a little harder, I think, to do it online, but they're starting to depend more and more online, which I just don't think that it's, equitable to do that. So, but yeah, you're required to report for SSI monthly, but they can use an estimate. As you report monthly, they can keep using the estimate so that they can, not have to, recalculate benefits, but and then eventually it's possible to actually have an underpayment if they overestimated the benefits. Anybody with a Social Security number can go and create a My SSA account. I started mine, and some of you who are my age might remember that Social Security used to send out a white document with green ink. Do you guys remember any of that? Around your birthday, they would say, when you retire, you'll get this much. Do you remember that? Okay, yeah. If you become disabled, this is what you would get. Your dependents would get this. Your survivors would get this. They don't mail that anymore. That's in your account now. So if you get your My SSA account, that document is in there. That's one reason to have that account, because it's a good planning tool. So like if you go to work and you're going to get a 401k or 403b, or you're going to plan for retirement, that document is important to have. So there's a portal in there that you can report on, and it's easy to use from what I understand based on the videos that they used to have, but that video has also disappeared. So again, I think there's going to be some information that's coming out soon about reporting, because I think that the offices are short-staffed right now, So, but yeah, so the question about reporting is that for SSI, you are required to report every month. The best way to do it is on your My SSA account. You don't have to upload anything. And then for Title II beneficiaries, you do have to report when you start working, and if anything changes after that. You're not required to do it every month, but I really counsel people to try to do it on your My SSA account and do it every month. So, and I'll explain in just a sec why. So keep records of who you talk to at Social Security, copies of what you submitted. I always tell people to do that. Let me see what the next slide. Yeah, so let me, so somebody asked about work reviews. I can't remember exactly what the question is, but there is a difference between a continuing disability review, a medical continuing disability review, and a work review. There are two separate things. It's one of the things I counsel people about. What's the difference? So it's very important to keep those separated. everybody on Social Security benefits, everybody on Social Security benefits, let me emphasize, everybody on Social Security benefits gets a medical review periodically. It's called a continuing disability review. So it's scheduled every 3, every 5, or every 7 years, right? Sometimes not even that. They stopped doing the reviews during the COVID and they're behind. So I've seen a lot of people whose reviews have come and gone and they weren't done. So medical reviews happen irrespective of whether you're working or not. The exception to the rule, the loophole, is if you are using your ticket to work and working with an employment network or Department of Rehab, and you're in plan, and if your medical review is scheduled during the time that you're in plan, that could be paused until you're out of your plan and you completed your services with DOR or an employment network and you're using your ticket to work, and you're making progress towards your goal. So that's the exception to the rule. So yeah, so the work reviews happen when someone reports earnings eventually. So for Title II or SSDI, the work reviews are done when you report income. So if you're reporting that you're using you report your income and Social Security sees that, oh, they're using their trial work review, they'll do a work review eventually. If they're working over SGA, they'll do a work review eventually. The problem with SSDA is that they're not notifying you each month. Greg, good job, you're using your trial work period. It doesn't work like that. You know, they're not contacting you every month saying you're using your trial work period. They eventually do a work review to go back and say, okay, you've used 9 trial work periods, you're under SGA, so your benefits will continue, right? That's one letter. The other letter may be, oh, you're working over SGA, you use your trial work periods, your benefits will pause on this day. You know, so that's ideally what should happen. Doesn't always happen that way. If you have not heard from Social Security at this point, call me. And sometimes, most of the time they do, they'll call me and say, you know, you said I was supposed to be hearing from Social Security. I'm using my 9th trial work period next month. Okay, so then we work with trying to make sure that they're doing everything they're supposed to report income. And if they haven't done a work review, we help them fill out the form to do a work review. So a calendar, if they're not working with us, you know, they can do a calendar and just say, you know, I need to call Social Security on this day if I haven't heard from them. Calendar. I mean, I still use a planner because I'm old school that way. And I use it for everything because I need it to be, you know, I don't like using my phone. Yeah, I can't use my phone. I'm sorry, I'm old school. You guys are probably thinking like, yeah. But I just, you know, a calendar, that's the best way to do it. Even if it's on your phone, right? You can put like, call Social Security on this day if I haven't heard from them, right? Social Security is supposed to send receipts when people report. They don't do it. You know, right now, a lot of people have retired from Social Security. A lot of people have left. A lot of offices are impacted. I know this because I'm on the phone with them trying to get documentation. When we work with folks, we have to verify benefits. And because we're contracted by Social Security, we work with every single office in our catchment area to get information. They know us, they know me. And, you know, I usually know when someone's retired because I'm calling them and I'm not getting an answer. So on here, it says how to reach WIPA. So we are DRC WIPA. These are our catchment areas, San Diego, Riverside, and Imperial counties. This is our toll-free number where you can call and talk to us. If you leave a message, we will get back to you. We try to call people back within 2 business days. If you're not in this catchment area, if you're not in San Diego, Riverside, or Imperial counties, then you'll have to contact, well, you can go to the Ticket to Work help site to find the local WIPA in your area by your zip code. If you're in California, there's 2 organizations that serve LA County. And then there's, you know, several organizations that go above LA County. So again, there's 7 projects. So yeah, so here's our number. Give us a call. If you leave a message on our toll-free number, I will give you a call back. So let's say you call our office, right? You'll get a call back from one of the counselors, myself. I'm usually the one looking into the toll-free number to make sure we're not missing any calls. So you'll get a call, and people that are calling me, they're going back to work. They have a job offer, they're working, they're maybe working with an employment network or Department of Rehab, or even like some people are working with their housing programs and, you know, calling me because they were referred by their housing program. And so I will call and say, okay, here's our service. Is this what you're looking for? And I explain the service. You know, we provide individualized counseling, so you know what's going to happen with your SSI or SSDI or both. Sometimes people are on both. So I'll do an intake, gather some information, and then we have to verify. We explain that we have to verify benefits, because I cannot give anybody any counseling until I verify benefits. And so we talk to the client. I was like, okay, this is how we can verify your benefit, depending on if they're on SSI or SSDI. So I work with the client to figure out what works best, you know. And so I may need to either, depending on their preference, email them or mail maybe a release to get some information through the Social Security office. So normally if I mail something, I provide a postage prepaid envelope, so they don't have to worry about like looking for a stamp or even like putting, you know, our address on. And then we eventually, when we get that release, I gather information from the Social Security office. Depending on the office, it may take long. You know, some offices, I've been waiting for some information since November from one office. I won't name the office. And then, you know, keep in touch with the client, but then we might work in pieces because we're still getting information. So like I might be working with a client, like, how do I report? Here's what you're going to report, and this is what's going to happen. SSI especially, we try to work quickly with SSI clients because they have the changes happen really quickly with them. They happen the month after the month that they work, right? And so for them, we work with them very quickly to try to get information or to make calculations so that they can prepare for whatever is going to happen. If they're on Title II, we have a little bit of cushion time depending on what information they've provided to gather information. But I'm also not only verifying Social Security, I'm also verifying Medi-Cal. Are they on Medi-Cal? What program are they on? And that I could do a little bit more quickly. So I'm working with the client and maybe talking to them. And then finally, maybe we get a document and we're like, okay, we got this document from Social Security. Let's go over it. And then we began more thorough benefits analysis of like everything. And before I talk to that person, I usually send them a copy of what we have received from Social Security to make sure that we're on the same page. Like, this is what you're receiving. Eventually we, before I talk to the client too, I say, you know, I'll summarize this in writing to you. So you can keep notes or not, I will summarize it. So they get the information. And then we provide a summary in writing of what we talk to them about. So along the way, there might be little pieces here and there. So like they might want a past plan, or there might be some information they need to find or get. So it just really depends. That sometimes I'm getting calls from clients too that haven't worked with us, and they hit a roadblock with Social Security. Like they got this notice and they don't understand it. So it's like I have to start that process, even though they're here with the process, right? Here's step A, and I go through all these steps to get to step, you know, G. They're in step F, like, oh, I've gotten notices from Social Security, you know, because I've been working. I was like, okay, but I still have to do an intake and all that stuff. So depending on the client, you know, but so yeah, that's essentially it. You call, you do an intake, we gather information, we work with you along the way, and then, you know, until we can verify all the benefits, and then we provide the individualized counseling on everything: Social Security, SSI, Medicare, Medi-Cal. There might be housing, so somebody might be on housing, and then they need to know how benefits, how earnings will impact that benefit. So we might need to figure out, like, well, what's your housing program? Who can you talk to? It's all over the place when it comes to housing. We usually have to talk to somebody to get some information, because it's just, the rules are just all over the place depending on the program. And all our services are remote. They always have been. We were required from the get-go, from our contract with Social Security, to provide remote services. So meaning like talking to clients over the phone. We don't have to provide in-person services. So we've always been on the phone with clients.
We will continuously have even more information on this. I know that it's a big question for a lot of people on returning to work, how to return to work, what your rights are, you know, what your benefits are. And we, throughout this year, will bring you even more information. So if we could give Alida a hand and thank her so very much for being our first back in person hybrid speaker, and your first back in person hybrid speaker. We thank you so much for the information. And for everyone, we know that it was a lot of information, and we will be publishing the PowerPoint so that you can go back and pull information and see the PowerPoint and look for that to be online on our website. We look forward to hearing from you, and thank you so much for joining us today. We thank you for kind of going through our first hybrid, and we promise to just keep getting better and better as each day goes forward. We're going to have a great 2023. Stick with us, guys. Thank you so much.